Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Scottish on the home side, half English on the away side, and out of the breweries involved in this one it is actually only the Scottish brewery that's featured on the channel before. So when it comes to the Scottish side of things, these guys are a brewery that I've tried many different beers from. Back in the day they were known for some really nice kind of lighter and more sessionable beers. I really enjoyed those, but in more recent times they've been doing some really big, heavy and quite bold beers actually, and they've been very good as well. So I'm really curious to see how this brewery kind of moves forward from there, but looks like it's exciting times ahead for them, I have to say. But the English brewery is one that is completely new to me. They seem to be a very recent addition to their local beer scene, but they've built a very good reputation for themselves in that short time and done quite a few different styles of beer. So I guess we'll need to seek out one of their cans and have a little look at that as a kind of solo brewery beer review on the channel at some point in the future. But the beer itself that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy. It's also a release from quite a special series that the Scottish brewery did quite recently, and it is a little bit of a monster as well. This is going to be one of the strongest beers, if not the strongest beer, that I've had from the Scottish brewery, in fact. So needless to say, I'm really curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for the home side of things then, we are going to head a little bit to the west of me here in Clipmanonshire over to Dumbarton, which is to the north of Glasgow, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Loch Lomond Brewery. So this particular beer is called All the Time in the World. It comes in at 14% ABV, so this is definitely a beer that is going to fuck your day in the best way. But it's a barley wine, barrel aged, and it's brewed in collaboration with Trinity Brewing Company, who come from Lichfield near Birmingham in England. So yeah, this should be a bit of a monster. I love a good barley wine, and some of the barrel aged ones can be really good. And at 14% ABV, I think this one will be a bit of a monster. And the bigger, stronger beers that we've had from Loch Lomond in recent times have been absolutely great. But this is another beer from their 10 Beers for 10 Years series that they've been doing, so I guess we can count this one as part of my crazy beers for 10 years that I've been doing here on the channel as well to celebrate Rampant Lion Reviews' 10th anniversary. But yeah, let's crack on with this then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved in this one before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Loch Lomond Brewery before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list in the near future. And there's also a link down there to my future reviews that I'll do from Trinity Brewing Company. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So you can go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in both the Scottish and the English playlists, and those are both being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there's some really interesting stuff up on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the breweries then. We'll kick off with the Scottish brewery, since they are the home institution in this case. So, Loch Lomond Brewery, as I've mentioned to you before, was opened by Fiona and Ewan McKeechern in Alexandria at the southern end of Loch Lomond back in 2011. So, the couple had been home brewers for a number of years, but they decided to turn professional after seeing the gap in the market for cask ales in Scotland, and also having seen the growth of other breweries in the country. But the first brewery that they had was located in the Lomond Industrial Estate in Alexandria, and they gradually scaled this facility up over the years. But in 2018, having had some really good success actually, they rebranded their beers and then moved to a new facility in Dumbarton in late 2019. And this new facility is equipped with a 35 hectolitre brew kit, and they also hired a new brewer called Thomas McGregor, who previously worked for Black Wolf Brewery, formerly Traditional Scottish Ales, of course, over in Throsk, but he also worked for Meantime Brewery down in London and England too. But this allowed Ewan to free up his time to focus on helping to develop the business, and they apparently have plans to move to a larger facility as part of the new Flamingoland resort that is apparently going to be built up on Loch Lomond at some time soon. But I'm not sure exactly what the progress is on that at the moment, because the plans have been kind of put up in the air, because there has been a lot of local resistance to that, because, you know, Loch Lomond is a site of natural beauty, so people don't really want to kind of mess around with it and build too much around it. So yeah, there is a wee bit of controversy surrounding the Flamingoland resort at Loch Lomond. But as of August 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 130 different kinds of beers. And as I mentioned to you earlier, when I first encountered this brewery, they were known mainly for the kind of lighter, more sessionable beers. What was it, the Silky Stout, if I remember correctly? That was a favourite of mine, but they also did some really nice kind of pale ales and stuff like that. So I think it was just called the Lomond Pale, if I remember rightly. That was also a really nice one. But yeah, like I said, in more recent times they've been starting to do bigger, heavier and more bold American style beers. The other ones were American style, I guess, but yeah, they were a little bit tamer than the ones that they're doing now. I think that's definitely fair to say. But the new big bold ones have been pretty damn good actually. So yeah, long may that continue, and I'll be keeping an eye on what Loch Lomond Brewery are putting out there over the next wee while. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about Loch Lomond Brewery, you can check out their website in the video description below. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go down then to England and we'll chat a little bit about Trinity Brewing Company. So Trinity Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Lichfield, which is just to the northeast of Birmingham, but also very close to the famous beer city of Burton upon Trent. And it's kind of right in the middle of England, I guess we could say too. But the brewery was founded back in 2020 by John Waterman, and he was originally a chef, but then moved into front of house and apparently spent 20 years managing some of the most well-known bars in both Leeds and Birmingham. But latterly moved into a brewery management role, and this, he said, really helped him develop an appreciation of craft beer, and he became a beer judge. He also did quite a lot of stuff on Instagram with beer as well, and all this activity really made him think about starting up his own brewery, and this kind of dream stuck with him, and eventually he decided to go for it. So when he was establishing the brewery, he thought about what he wanted to name it, and Trinity was chosen because of the, you know, it was twofold. So the three ingredients of beer: hops, malt and water. I guess he was forgetting about the yeast there. But it was also as a tribute to the three-spired cathedral in Lichfield as well. And, you know, Trinity, they talk about the Holy Trinity as well, which is probably what the three spires are meant to signify. But the brewery operates an 8-barrel kit, which is, you know, that's probably in the region of like 1,200 litres per brew, something like that. And they've got a tap room on site, which has 12 different taps. They do beer, cider and all this kind of things. They have local gins and stuff like that too, but they've also got a rotating kitchen in there which has pizza sometimes, barbecue, all of this kind of thing, and they're open from Thursday to Saturday. But as of August 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 65 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and it seems that they've tried quite a few different styles actually. So yeah, they have built a very good reputation for themselves. Their beers are very highly regarded. So we will need to see about getting one or two of their beers to review on the channel a bit later on. So I'll have a wee look at that over the next wee while and see what I can do. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about them for the moment. They are still a very new addition though, but I'm sure we'll be able to add a little bit more about these guys to the brewery notes as time goes on. But yeah, if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and then you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer itself then. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, I think this is portraying some of the landscape around Loch Lomond. Looks very, very familiar. I drove up there about a week before filming this review. I was taking my friend around and showing her different places. But there you can see the Loch Lomond Brewery symbol there. There's the Trinity Brewing Company symbol. This looks very nice. And there you can see the name of this one all the time in the world. So as I mentioned earlier, this one comes in at 14% ABV. They're saying it's a barrel-aged barley wine, but I had a little rake around on the websites and stuff like this, and I couldn't actually find out what barrels this has been aged in, but I'm sure from the aroma and the flavour we will be able to tell. But it says on the back here, barrel-aged barley wine, 10 beers for 10 years. We never need an excuse to create a new beer, but as this is our 10th year of brewing, we thought we'd go a little further and create 10 beers to celebrate our 10 great years. 10 great beers brewed with 10 great friends. Happy birthday to us. Thank you to Trinity Brewing Co for working with us on this beer. So their anniversary, I believe, would have been 2021. So this beer, it's funnily enough, it says, I think it says it's canned on the 2nd of December 2021, and it's best before the 2nd of December 2022. I'm going to say to Loch Lomond Brewery, I think they'll have that wrong, to be quite honest with you. A barley wine will last. You should drink a barley wine within 5 years. If you leave it longer than 5 years, the hoppy character kind of makes it go bad, and that's the thing. So you should always drink a barley wine usually within 5 years. I've learned that the hard way because I've kept a few and they've just not aged all that well. But you know, with this one at this stage, if it's canned on in December 2021, we'll be drinking this beer when it's about 20 months old, something like that. We're drinking this one in early August of 2023, so this will be at just a good age. About a year to 2 years, I think, is a very good age to have barley wines. Maybe up to 3 years, and then I think they start to kind of decrease a little bit. But yeah, as I said, 14% ABV this one. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. I'm really curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. And I will say, as soon as we open this, the can is pretty much full to the brim. So yeah, but it smells absolutely lovely. We'll see. The thing with this was, though, that the can wasn't too hard, actually. That was the thing. And there's not too much carbonation in it either. Now, normally with a barley wine, you wouldn't expect too much of it, but it doesn't seem, they're saying it should have been drunk by December 2022. I would disagree with them a wee bit. I think a year, they should have put another year at least on the best before. But yeah, you can see that when we poured this beer, it had a little kind of fluffy layer of a sort of fawn coloured head. That has, of course, faded away just to be pretty much nothing. There's a few bubbles giving you like a little touch of a ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, there's not a lot visible on that. Just a few wispy bits over the top of the beer there too. But one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass. A few little ones going up the side of it too. But it looks pretty damn nice. I mean, in terms of colour of this one, if we shine the light through this, this is actually, I'm not sure how well it's going to show up in the camera. I think to you guys, the beer is appearing to be like quite a dark sort of mahogany chestnutty colour, but to the naked eye it's actually got quite a little bit of a kind of ruby tint to it, but a very dark, rich amber colour as well. And I think, there's a fair wee bit of like suspension, sediment particles in this one too. But yeah, it's all natural, of course, so shouldn't be an issue, I don't think. But yeah, in terms of the colour of your beer, remember, this depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will also affect the colour of it too, and those do play a role when it comes to like more brown beers like this. If you're talking about an imperial stout, it's not going to, barrel aging and adjuncts aren't going to affect them all that much, but it is possible with these ones. The beer does have a little bit of natural haze to it, of course, but yeah, it does look pretty damn nice, this one. The colour of this one is pretty much kind of what you'd expect from the style. Now I'm curious to see whether if this is going to be more of an American barley wine or an old school English barley wine. The main difference for me is that the American ones tend to be a bit more oily and sweet, and the fruity characters are a little bit more kind of bright and ready. The English barley wines have a bit more dryness to their sweetness and toastiness, and then also a little bit of a drier fruity character for me. And they tend to be a bit lower in ABV as well. At 14%, this one, pretty sure it's going to be American. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of this beer. I think we can dive in and have a wee look at the aroma before we taste it. So let's do this. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it's bourbon. It's bourbon barrel aged. Yeah. There's a chance that it's got a little bit of rum. That's a blend with a little bit of a rum barrel aged thing. But I'm pretty damn sure this is pretty damn sure this is bourbon barrel aged for the most part, and it's an American barley wine. You can smell it from the sweetness straight away. I will say that once again, this is a beautiful smelling beer. I was looking forward to trying this one when I pulled it out of the cupboard again when I came home this time. I think I bought this one maybe about a year ago when I was home before, and I was looking forward to it then. I just didn't have time to review it when I was home before, but still, I'm kind of glad I left it now, to be honest, because it's probably just got better and better. But yeah, this is a beautiful smelling beer, and I'm going to say straight away, thumbs up to Loch Lomond Brewing. So, the backbone of this beer, absolutely, you've got that lovely, smooth American oak, and the way that this beer goes together is really, really nice in that sense. So as I've often said, for me, American oak, it's a different species of tree from the European oak. American oak is always smoother. It's got a little bit of a kind of vanilla quality to it. So yeah, lovely, smooth, woody character in there, a little bit of a vanilla note to it. And then above that, you start to get the bourbon spirit. And as I've said on the channel many times before, American bourbon for me is quite a bit sweeter than Scotch whisky, and it's very obvious. You can smell that sweet American bourbon coming out of this one. There is a chance, like I say, it's got a wee touch of a rum barrel to it, or a wee touch, it's not fruity enough to be cognac, but yeah, I'm pretty certain this one is bourbon barrel aged. I think that's one thing I would criticise Loch Lomond for, actually, is not saying what kind of barrel they've used and how long it's been aged for and stuff like that. Putting little details like this on the beer, I think, is always good, because it educates the drinker a wee bit more about what they're drinking, and that's always a good thing. Makes people more nerdy and want to try other things, and it encourages breweries to be experimental, of course. Not that you've got a lack of that from Loch Lomond or Trinity, it seems, for that matter, either. But yeah, the woody barley-aged backbone of this beer is really, really nice. On top of that, you start to get what you would expect from the Barleywine. Now remember, the Barleywine is essentially the big brother of the double IPA. The modern triple and quadruple IPAs, they use the same hop to malt ratios as the doubles, but they just put more malt in, and thus the beer is more alcoholic. But yeah, Paleo IPA, double IPA and Barleywine, it's a family of beers related through their hop to malt ratios. But yeah, for me, the kind of bready backbone that this beer has is really nice. You've got a little bit of kind of fresh brown bready bread crust in there. You've got a sweeter kind of you've got that little bit of bread crust in there. You've got a kind of wholemealy brown bready character in there too. So yeah, sweet kind of like almost slightly rye bready bread crust coming out of it. Sweet kind of wholemeal brown bread. Within that brown bready character, there's a little touch of like nuttiness coming out of the beer, like an almond or pecan. Yeah, so there's a little bit of an almondy or pecan sort of thing going on, and then above that, you start to get all the kind of brown sugars out of the beer, which is exactly what you'd expect. It almost smells, actually, the bready character you have in this one, it smells like there's two layers. I think there's a wholemeal brown bread, and then there's more like a kind of sweet fruit loaf type thing coming out of this one. Then you've got all the brown sugars. So you definitely have straight up sweet caramel in there. You have a little touch of a more kind of leathery brown sugar as well, which makes me wonder about the length of the wort boil on this one. We'll talk about that later. But then, yeah, you've got sweet caramel in there, little touch of treacle and molasses, quite a little bit of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing too. But yeah, this one, in terms of its malty and barrel side of things, it really gives you what you would expect from the style. There's nothing madly surprising about it. It's just really nicely done. So it does me in that sense. I'm quite happy with it. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and barrel side of this beer. On the hoppy side of things then, so with this one being barrel aged, and with it being about 20 months old in the can, quite a little bit of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one. That's just kind of how it goes. But you still get some remnants of that in there. There's a little tiny bit of earthiness for sure. There's a little bit of herbal quality, and there's a wee bit of floral note. But for me, the green component for the most part is like this kind of leafy, wet, fresh, grassy kind of character. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice. Yeah, the aroma coming out of this one is really, really nice in that sense too. Yeah, the green component just adds that little bit more depth to the beer, and then on the fruity side of things, yeah, on the fruity side of things, I think we have yeah, on that fruity side of things, I think we have a little bit of a mix of things going on. You do have a little bit, there's a very slight phenolic character to this one, but not overly much. But I'm getting a lot of like juicy plum, a little bit of prune, and yeah, a little bit of like quite juicy plum, drier prune, and then also you're getting some oily fig in there, but I'm getting quite a lot of blackcurrant out of this one. I'm getting a lot of prune and a lot of blackcurrant. And it's those two are the most prominent fruits for me in the aroma of this beer. So I'm just really curious to see how this one's going to play out on the actual flavour, because it did have a very good rating on Untappd at a 4.04, which for a barley wine's pretty damn good actually. Especially one from a Scottish brewery. There's not many breweries here can hit that height, and that shows you how how big a change there's been at Loch Lomond Brewery. But yeah, that's lovely stuff. That the aroma of this one's absolutely beautiful, and for me this is going to be a sipper for the rest of the night. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But we are going to have a little taste of this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, let's taste this one then. So this is All the Time in the World, a 14% barrel-aged barley wine from Loch Lomond Brewery in Alexandria. Well, formerly in Alexandria, now in Dumbarton, over on the west coast of Scotland. Really pretty little place, and it's brewed in collaboration with Trinity Brewing Co from Lichfield near Birmingham in the south of England. Or in the middle of England, I should say. Brain isn't working. That's why we need barley wine. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, very well done beer, and it certainly does give you that little bit of alcohol warmth down here, but that's really nicely done. It's just getting into a really good stage at the moment actually, because you can feel it sort of mellowing out and sweetening up and things, and the hoppy character is still there too, because that's the thing, as I say, if you leave a barley wine for too long, you get this like really dry, almost, it's like a really dry, almost piney resinous character out of these kind of beers. So yeah, I think a year and a half, 6 month minimum, but then a year to 2 years, I think, maybe slightly over that, is the best time to drink a barley wine for me. But this is lovely. It's a beautiful beer, this. So big thumbs up to Loch Lomond Brewery. That's going to get better and better as well as it warms up in the glass and opens up. But yeah, it's quite a boozy thing at 14% ABV. The only kind of bad thing, the only like minor criticism I can have of this beer is that because it's so high in alcohol, it does it, and because it's barrel aged as well, it does feel just a little bit light. Whenever you barrel age something, you're always going to sacrifice a wee bit of the mouthfeel to get the more infused flavours. And it's not lacking in flavour, but it is a little touch light in its mouthfeel. You would want it just that little bit more thick. So maybe you could maybe do a slightly longer wort boil with it, because it doesn't feel like it's had too long a wort boil, to be honest, because otherwise you get a bit, the brown sugars would be a little bit more kind of leathery and dry than they are. So yeah, but they still have a very, very nice barley wine with it, but a few tweaks and it could be even better, I would say. So I hope they take this recipe and I think they should tweak this recipe and do it again at some point, because I think it'd be a bit of a shame for them not to do this beer again. I've said that about pretty much all the beers I've tried from this 10 beers for 10 years series that they've done. So it's good. It really is very nice, this one, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. Right, but let's break this down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth, as we always do. So, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer is, of course, the backbone of the beer is, of course, that lovely smooth American oak. And what you'll notice is that it gets even smoother the further forward on the palate you go. You can feel it's a little bit drier further back. So remember that general trend with your palate, that sweeter flavours come out further forward and more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely smooth American oak in there. On top of that, you get the bourbon spirit. You can feel actually toward the front of that middle third of your palate, there's a little touch of vanilla in there. I always get a wee bit of vanilla from American oak. But then you've got the spirit layer in this one. And that is, of course, American bourbon. And it actually feels like it's quite a boozy bourbon, this one. But it feels familiar, though. I'd be curious to know what bourbon cask they've used. Because yeah, it's not cognac barrel aged, this one. It's not fruity enough to be cognac. And it's not kind of sweet enough to be rum either, I would say. Either that, or it's a mainly bourbon blend with a little bit of a rum barrel aged thing in it too. Like I say, this is why they should tell you what kind of barrels and stuff you've aged it in. But yeah, it is really nice, that one. But you can feel the booze in this beer for sure. I've only taken a few sips of it and I can already feel it up here. And it's not as if I've not eaten something today either. But yeah, above the kind of bourbon sugar layer, then you've got a nice kind of bready character into this one. So you can feel a little bit of it's like a kind of almost fresh wholemeal brown bready bread crust there. That forms the kind of backbone of the malty side of the beer above the bourbon sugars. And then you start to get like a more dense, slightly rye bready type character. Then there's a wholemeal brown bready character above that, and then you get this more kind of like brandy soaked fruit loaf type thing coming out of this one. So that's really interesting as well. Yeah, it really is a very layered beer, this one, in the way that it shows you the malty flavours, and you can feel that as it warms up, it is actually getting sweeter and sweeter as well. It's getting a bit thicker too, which is nice, because when I did first taste it, it did feel slightly, it did feel a little bit thinner than a 14%er should be. But yeah, above the kind of the sort of brandy soaked fruit loaf type thing that's in there, you can feel a nice kind of you start to feel the brown sugars coming out of this one. Like I said with this beer, it doesn't come across as if it's had all that long a wort boil, and that's one of the things you can do with barley wines just to make them a wee bit more complex. You can give them, a 6, 12, whatever length wort boil you want to do, and that gives you these lovely big leathery brown sugary notes. Like, you do get a little touch of that in the middle third of your palate. So yeah, a little touch of that in the above everything else on that middle third of your palate. But then toward the edges of the palate, it's almost, I think in fairness, it's almost like you've got a little circle in the middle third of your palate, so you can feel the kind of leathery base in there. Then as you move further out from that toward the edges, you've got a little bit of a more kind of toasty sort of thing out of this one. There's a little bit of a toasty brown sugary character in there. So yeah, wee touch of a kind of toasty brown sugar, but then above the kind of more leathery brown sugar, you start to get the kind of sweeter, like butterscotchy, straight up caramel there. So that's above the kind of more slightly leathery there and there, and then in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel the sort of slightly boozy treacle molasses note coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that this goes together is quite interesting. I do think it could do with a slightly longer wort boil, just to thicken the mouthfeel up and sort of give you a wee bit more dryness to the sweetness in this one. I think that would just diversify the beer really nicely. But yeah, as it stands, it is still really quite good. And this is the first, big beast barley wine I remember from Loch Lomond. So yeah, they're only going to get better at this as time goes on. But I think that's everything we really need to say about the middle third of your palate in this one, other than the fact that there's a little touch of nutty character kind of sitting within the bready layers of the beer too. You get a little bit of nuttiness out of that the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, I like that. I do like how that goes together. So on the the middle third of your palate then, or on the back third of your palate, then we can move on to that. As I often say, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, they just come out at different intensities. But the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. So you can feel there's a little bit of kind of brown bready character underneath. Then you've got a wee bit of a sort of, you get a little bit of a more kind of like almost German pumpernickel type bread in there. So you've got two different kinds of bready character in there. But then yeah, as you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel the drier aspects of the American wood coming out of this one, the nice American oak there. You can feel the bourbon sugar there is a little bit more boozy and dry and almost like spicy in a sense. So you can feel that in the bourbon layer. But then above that, you've got the kind of rye bready bread crust. You've got that slightly rye bready layer there, which feels a little lighter and more airy. Then above that, you get the more wholemeal brown bread, and above all of that, you can feel the more kind of brandy soaked, like fruit loaf type thing that's there. But all of these bready layers just feel that little bit lighter and more airy. And above everything else, you can feel that the the kind of oily brown sugary characters, just the drier aspects of those just creeping over the top of that back third of your palate. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really, really nice. So on the on the back third of the palate, just above everything else, you start to get some of the yeasty character out of this beer, and it takes a wee bit of time for it to show, but you can feel that there's this really dense, kind of sweet, brown bready, doughy character sitting there. So it has that, and it feels like it's soaked in bourbon, and you get this little honeycomb kind of layer around it. So that sits above everything else on the back third of the palate. You can definitely feel that the back third of your palate is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I like that about this one. I really do like how that pieces together. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle and back third of your palate with this beer. So on the back corners of your palate, then we'll go on to the green component of this beer. As I said, most of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this, but you still get some of it, and I think that's nice about barley wines. It adds to the complexity of flavour. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there, but as you move further forward, there's a little bit of herbal character, but very quickly you get the remnants of what feels like a more piney, resinous character, and just a little bit of floral spice on the front corners of the tongue. And as I say, I do quite like how that goes together. But round the front curve of your palate, you've got a wee bit of a more kind of light, grassy note coming out of this one. There's just a wee touch of zestiness to that as well. And yeah, as I say, all of that goes together really, really nicely in this beer. But you can feel that it has dropped out because of the age of the beer. Nothing wrong with that, and nothing unexpected or unusual about that, I should say. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things, just to kind of round off. So, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you start to get a nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there again, and it's actually a little touch cakey. It feels like that kind of bready, it feels like that sort of bready, kind of that brandy soaked, brandy soaked fruit loaf, but also a little bit Christmas puddingy, which is kind of interesting. You get a little touch of phenol out of it. But yeah, the base of the front third of your palate is again the smooth American oak. You can really feel the vanilla notes within the oak this time too. You've got a slightly sweeter bourbon layer, and then yeah, you've got like a kind of rye bready sweetness there, and then above that you've got that lovely oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together I think is really nice. Let's focus on the fruity side of things then, just to round off. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of the beer is really nice actually. And I think I do get a little bit of grapefruit out of this, so I wonder if one of the hops that's been used in this is Chinook. And that would explain some of the piney resin and the sort of grapefruit note. So yeah, at the very back of that front third of your palate, I do get a little bit of a grapefruity note out of this one. There's something very familiar with the fruity character of this. I'd love to know what hop was used in this, but yeah, a little bit of a strong grapefruity note in the back of that front third of your palate there. But as you move further forward from that, you do start to get a little bit of plum out of this one. You can feel underneath that a kind of juicier and slightly drier kind of prune. It almost reminds me actually of Japanese ume plums. It has that kind of vibe to it. There's a little touch of datey character in there, and as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, it's got a little bit of a kind of raisiny type note to it. But then yeah, into the front half of the front third of your palate, it's all about the black currant. So yeah, lots of kind of prune in this beer for me, and like Japanese ume plums, and then a big black curranty note. And I think that would summarise the fruit in this one, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Cascade and Chinook and maybe something else that's in this one, because to a degree it does seem familiar, but there are a few other wee things going on there. But like I say, this is a lovely barley wine, and it's getting better and better and sweeter and thicker the longer you let it kind of warm up. But yeah, I think we can round off now with a wee look at the mouthfeel with this one. Definitely like an old school American barley wine, this one. It just needed a slightly longer wort bottle. That's the only criticism I think I can have of this one, because that would have given it a slightly thicker mouthfeel. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel overall, I would say that it is kind of like bottom end of full bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth. It's got a lovely oily slickness to it. There is a wee bit of bitterness there to this one. It's got to be about 60-ish IBUs. There's still a fair little bit of bitter resinous in this one, which is great. And then in the malty side of things, the barrel gives you a bit of dryness. The spirit actually gives you a bit of booziness. You can really feel the kind of warmth in this one. This beer, it's one of the barley wines that doesn't hide its alcohol all that well. But yeah, you've got a lovely smooth breadiness, and there's some sweeter notes on top of that. And then yeah, you've got the lovely oily fruity characters coming out of this one too. But it's a really interesting beer, this one. It's made me think a little bit about barley wines. But yeah, as far as I can remember, this is the very first barley wine I've had from Loch Lomond. But if they take the recipe they've got here, give it a longer wort boil, and just refine it a little bit, I think they could be on to a winner with this. So I'd love to see them do this one again. or do another barley wine at some point soon. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one, to be honest with you. This has been a really interesting beer to try, and I can certainly feel the booze going to my head with this one, that's for sure. Definitely an American barley wine, and kind of showing you the exciting things that Loch Lomond Brewery have been doing over the last wee while, and definitely nice to have an introduction to Trinity Brewing as well. But yeah, I think we can leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from Loch Lomond Brewery and from Trinity Brewing Company. We need to do some solo brewery beer reviews of Trinity, of course. But yeah, this has been really nice to try. This was the All the Time in the World, a 14% bourbon barrel aged barley wine from Loch Lomond Brewery in Dumbarton here in Scotland. Really cool to review this one for you. Another one of my crazy beers for 10 years of Rampant Lion Reviews. I think we can leave it at that. So thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.